The night was quiet in the small town near the great spaceport. Most people were asleep and only the hum of distant ships in the sky could be heard. But one human teenager, Ethan, was still awake. He often stayed up late in his little workshop, fixing broken machines and dreaming about building something that could change his life. He was only 16, but he had clever hands and a sharp mind. His father had once told him, "Every machine has a soul waiting to wake up. You just need to listen." Ethan never forgot those words. That night, while he was working on a small drone, the ground shook under his feet. It was not a normal shake, it was heavy, deep, and frightening. Ethan froze. Then came a loud crash like metal breaking against stone. He rushed outside, his heart racing. In the sky, far beyond the forest, he saw fire streaking down like a falling star. But it was not a star. It was a ship. The fireball tore through the trees and vanished into the darkness with another terrible boom. Birds screamed and flew into the night. The earth trembled again and the air smelled of smoke and burning fuel. Ethan stood still for a moment, unsure if he should run back inside or go closer. Curiosity burned inside him stronger than fear. He grabbed a flashlight and started running toward the forest. The woods were dark and the smell of smoke grew stronger with every step. He could hear something hissing and sparking ahead. His heart pounded so loudly that he thought the whole forest could hear it. Branches scratched his arms and the ground was rough under his shoes, but he did not stop. He felt something deep inside telling him that this was important, that someone needed him. At last, Ethan reached a clearing and his eyes widened in shock. There, lying broken among the trees, was a small alien ship. Its hull was cracked, glowing faintly with blue lights. Sparks flew from torn wires and thick smoke rose into the night sky. Pieces of metal lay scattered around like shattered glass. Ethan had seen alien ships at the spaceport before, but never this close. And never like this, broken, bleeding, and alive with strange sounds. He stepped closer, his breath heavy. Suddenly, a sound came from inside the wreckage. It was not the groan of metal, it was a voice. A weak, trembling voice. Ethan froze again. Someone was inside. He swallowed hard, shining his flashlight into the broken doorway of the ship. And then he saw her. An alien woman lay half-hidden among the smoke and broken parts. Her skin was pale silver, glowing faintly in the dark. Her large eyes blinked weakly, reflecting the light. Her clothes were torn and there was blood, though it was not red but a shimmering blue that stained the floor. Ethan gasped. He had never been this close to an alien before, and certainly not one who was hurt. But what made his heart stop was not just her wounds. Her stomach was round, heavy. She was pregnant. The alien woman looked at him, her lips shaking. "Help, please." Her voice was soft but filled with pain. She tried to move but could not. Ethan stepped back, his mind racing. He was only a boy, what could he possibly do? But the look in her eyes was desperate, pleading, and full of fear. I'll try," Ethan whispered, though he was not sure if she even understood human words. Suddenly there was another sound outside the clearing, a sharp mechanical hum. Ethan turned his head quickly. Between the trees, glowing red lights were moving closer. He knew that sound, it was enemy drones. The spaceport often warned people about smugglers and hunters who chased alien travelers. Whoever these drones belonged to, they were not here to help. They were searching. The alien woman grabbed Ethan's hand weakly. "Hide, kill," she whispered, her breath shaking. Her grip, though weak, was enough to make him understand. If the drones found her, they would kill both her and the unborn child. Ethan's heart raced faster than ever. He looked at the wreck, at the sparks, at the woman's glowing blood, and then at the red lights weaving between the trees. He knew he had only seconds. He pulled her arm over his shoulder, shocked by how light she felt, and tried to lift her. She winced in pain, but she did not cry out. Together they stumbled out of the wreck and into the darkness of the forest. The humming grew louder behind them. Ethan's flashlight swung wildly as he half-dragged, half-carried her deeper into the woods. The ground was rough and branches tore at him, but he did not stop. He could hear the drones scanning the wreck, their sharp beams of light cutting through the smoke. If they looked beyond the ship, they would see the broken trail he left behind. Ethan's lungs burned and sweat covered his face. He did not know how far he could go, but he knew he had to keep her safe. She leaned on him, whispering something in her alien language, words he could not understand but somehow felt. She was trusting him with her life, and with her child's life. Finally, they reached a deeper part of the forest where the trees grew thicker. Ethan lowered her carefully onto the ground behind a fallen log. He pressed a finger to his lips, telling her to stay quiet. The alien nodded weakly, her glowing eyes watching him with both fear and hope. The drones buzzed closer, red lights cutting through the branches. Ethan crouched low, holding his breath. If they turned their lights just a little more, they would see everything. He felt the alien's trembling hand grip his wrist tightly. And in that moment, Ethan realized this was no simple accident. He was caught in something far bigger, something dangerous. But it was too late to run. He was now the only shield between this alien mother and death. The humming grew louder. The red lights flashed closer. And then, the screen goes black. The forest was silent except for the sharp hum of the enemy drones. Their red lights moved across the broken trees like hunting eyes. Ethan crouched low, his chest tight, every breath burning his throat. Beside him, the alien woman trembled, clutching her swollen stomach. Her silver skin glowed faintly in the dark, and Ethan knew it was dangerous. Her glow might give them away. The drones paused near the wrecked ship, scanning the metal, sending out beams of white light. Sparks still hissed from the broken hull, and the smell of smoke drifted through the clearing. Ethan knew they would not stay long. Once they realized no one was inside, they would spread out, searching. And when they searched, they would find him. He looked at the woman again. Her eyes were wide, pleading. She whispered, "Please. Not here, baby. Cannot." Her voice cracked and she coughed weakly. A blue stain spread across her lips. Ethan's heart pounded harder. She could barely breathe. He bit his lip, thinking fast. He could not leave her here, and he could not outrun the drones if they saw them. There was only one choice. He had to take her to his workshop. It was hidden under his family's old barn, built from scrap parts and dreams. If they could reach it, he might be able to keep her alive. Ethan leaned closer. "I'll get you out. But you have to trust me." The alien woman gave a weak nod. Her glowing eyes softened for a moment as if she saw something in him, something she could believe in. Ethan's fear turned into determination. He had promised, and now he had to keep that promise. He slid his arm under her and helped her up. She was lighter than he expected, fragile like glass. Slowly, carefully, he guided her through the thick trees. Every step felt like walking on thunder. Every rustle of leaves made him flinch. The drone's hum followed them, moving closer. Ethan crouched low and pulled her behind another log. He waited, holding his breath, as one of the drones floated past. Its red light scanned the ground only a few feet away. He could hear the soft crackle of its engines, smell the heat of its metal. His heart raced so loudly he feared it would give them away. But then slowly the drone drifted on, its light sweeping toward the wreck again. "Now," Ethan whispered. He pulled her up and they moved again, deeper into the forest. The path was hard. Roots caught his shoes and branches whipped his arms, but he did not stop. He could not. After what felt like forever, the trees opened and the faint outline of his family's barn appeared. Relief flooded him, but he could not celebrate yet. The drones were still near. He helped the alien woman through the side door, closing it softly behind them. The barn smelled of old wood and hay, but underneath was something no one in town knew about. Ethan guided her to a trap door hidden under a pile of tools. He lifted it and a faint glow of blue light spilled out. "Down here," he said softly. She hesitated, fear flashing in her eyes, but then she followed. Slowly, painfully, she climbed down the narrow steps with his help. When they reached the bottom, the alien's eyes widened. Ethan's workshop was a secret world of machines. Old engines, wires, and glowing panels filled the room. A half-finished robot stood in the corner, and shelves of strange parts lined the walls. The place looked messy, but every piece had a purpose. The alien woman whispered weakly, "You build all this?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, it's not much, but it's safe." She looked around again, her lips trembling, then collapsed onto a chair. Her breathing was sharp and heavy. Ethan quickly searched his shelves. He had built many things from scraps: filters, pumps, air purifiers. Maybe something could help. "Stay awake," he said firmly. He grabbed a broken air scrubber he had salvaged from the junkyard. It was cracked, but with some quick wiring, maybe it could work. His hands shook as he connected wires, sparks flashing. The woman coughed again, clutching her stomach. Ethan worked faster, his mind racing. If I can make this machine push clean air, maybe she can breathe. He tightened the last wire, flipped a switch, and the device hummed to life. A soft flow of filtered air escaped through a small mask. "Here," he said, holding it to her face. She breathed in slowly, her chest rising. For the first time, the tight pain in her expression eased. She closed her eyes and let out a shaky sigh. Ethan almost collapsed from relief. The machine worked, at least for now, but then she whispered something that froze him. "Not just me. Baby, weak. Must live." She placed her glowing hands on her stomach. Ethan stared, his throat dry. She was not just fighting for her own life. She was fighting for the life inside her. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to think. He had helped her breathe, but if the baby was in danger, he would need more. He had no training, no alien medicine, nothing but scraps of machines and his will. Still, when he looked at her trembling form, he knew one thing. He could not give up. The alien woman opened her eyes again and whispered, "My husband will find me. He, very powerful. But until then, you are all I have." Her glowing eyes filled with tears. "Protect my child." Ethan felt his chest tighten. He was just a boy, but at that moment he made a silent promise. He would not let her down. Above them, faintly through the wooden roof, the drones still hummed, circling like predators. The danger was not over. But now Ethan had something stronger than fear. He had a purpose, and he had no idea that this choice would change the fate of more than just one family. It would change the fate of entire worlds. The underground workshop was quiet except for the soft hum of Ethan's broken machines. The alien woman sat weakly in the chair, the filter mask pressed against her face. Her silver skin shimmered faintly, but her breaths were shallow. Her hands rested protectively on her swollen stomach. Ethan paced the room, his mind racing faster than any machine he had ever built. He was only 16. He had no doctor's training, no alien knowledge. Yet somehow this life, 2 lives, were in his hands. His heart pounded. He wanted to run, to hide, to forget he ever saw that burning ship. But every time he looked at the woman, her eyes full of pain and trust, he knew he couldn't. Outside, faintly, the sound of drones echoed in the night. The hunters were still searching. If they discovered the barn, it would be the end for her, for him, for the unborn child. He pressed his fists against the work table. He had to do something. The woman's voice broke the silence. "Child, you saved me." She coughed, her voice weak. "But my baby, so fragile. If I die, the baby dies. You must try." Ethan shook his head, almost laughing in fear. "Me, I don't know how. I fix machines, not people." But she looked at him with those glowing eyes, and her words cut deep. "Machine, life. You fix one, you can fix the other, please." Ethan froze. His father's voice echoed in his mind. "Every machine has a soul waiting to wake up. Even broken ones. Listen and you'll know what to do." Ethan swallowed hard. Could it be the same for living beings? Could he really try? His chest tightened with fear, but then something changed. He remembered all the times people in town had laughed at him, calling him the junk boy, saying his inventions were worthless. No one ever believed in him. But now here was someone who believed, even if she was an alien from another world. Her life and her baby's life were tied to his hands. He took a deep breath and made his decision. "Okay, I'll try. I don't know if I can, but I'll try." The alien woman's eyes softened with relief. Tears glistened as she whispered, "Thank you, human boy." Ethan quickly scanned his shelves. He had pieces of old medical equipment he had once salvaged, thinking they might be useful one day. A cracked scanner, a broken stabilizer belt, a half-dead oxygen pump. None of them worked properly, but maybe, just maybe, he could combine them into something new. He pulled everything onto the table. Tools clattered, wires tangled, sparks flew as he began to work. His hands moved faster than his fear. He cut wires, twisted circuits, and soldered broken edges together. Every sound of the drones outside reminded him that time was running out. The alien woman gasped again, clutching her stomach. "Pain, too soon," she whispered. Ethan's heart leapt into his throat. Was she going into labor already? He had no idea how alien births worked, but it was clear. The baby was coming early. He worked harder, his forehead dripping with sweat. He whispered to himself as he built. "Think, Ethan, think. She needs clean air. She needs steady blood flow. She needs calm. Machines can do this. Machines can help." Piece by piece, he built something strange and new. An air scrubber connected to a small pump. A scanner linked to a stabilizer belt. A cracked power cell holding it all together. It looked messy, ugly, and fragile. But maybe it would save her. Finally, he lifted the belt and carefully strapped it around her stomach. The device beeped weakly, its lights flickering. He held his breath, waiting. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft hum filled the room. The belt tightened gently, releasing controlled pulses of energy. The woman gasped as her pain eased slightly. The machine worked, at least a little. Her glowing eyes filled with tears. You did it!" Ethan almost cried in relief. But then he heard the sound above. The drones were closer now. Their hum was sharp, angry. They had traced the smoke from the crash. Soon they would scan the barn. "Stay here," Ethan whispered. "Don't make a sound." He climbed the stairs back up to the barn. Through the cracks in the wood, he saw the red lights moving across the field. One drone stopped near the barn door. Its beam scanned the ground, picking up tracks. Ethan's heart froze. He had left footprints when carrying her here. The drone hovered closer. Its red eye blinked. Ethan grabbed a metal pipe from the wall. His hands shook, but his jaw tightened. He couldn't let them find her. The barn door creaked as the drone slid inside. Its red light scanned the hay, the beams, the shadows. Slowly, it turned toward the trap door. Ethan gripped the pipe tighter. His breath came fast, his whole body trembling. He knew he was just a boy with a piece of metal against a killing machine. But he also knew something stronger than fear. He had made a promise. With a shout, Ethan swung the pipe. The blow cracked against the drone's side. Sparks flew. The machine whirred angrily, spinning toward him. A red beam shot past his shoulder, burning the wood behind him. He swung again, harder, smashing the drone's lens. With a final burst of sparks, it collapsed to the floor, silent. Ethan stood over it, panting. His arm shook, but he was alive. More importantly, the alien woman was still safe below. He pushed the broken drone into the shadows and rushed back down. She looked up at him with wide eyes. "You fight for me?" Ethan nodded, breathless. "I promised, didn't I?" Her lips trembled into the smallest smile. "Human. Braver than I thought." Ethan sat beside her, exhausted but determined. He realized then that his life had already changed. He was no longer just the junk boy. He was the protector of something bigger than himself. And in that quiet, humming workshop, Ethan knew his decision had set him on a path he could never turn back from. The workshop smelled of smoke and burnt wires. Ethan sat on the cold floor, his hands still shaking from the fight with the drone above. The broken machine lay hidden in the barn, but he knew more would come. One victory only meant more danger. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the alien woman again. Her silver skin glowed faintly under the dim light, but her face was pale and weak. The stabilizer belt he built hummed softly, keeping her pain under control for the moment. Yet her breathing was shallow, and every few minutes her body trembled. Ethan realized with a sinking heart her labor was beginning. She clutched her stomach and whispered, "Too soon." "The baby cannot wait." Ethan froze. He had never even seen a human birth up close, let alone an alien one. He stared at her helplessly, his heart racing. He wanted to run, to scream, to call for help, but there was no one. He was the only one here. If he failed, both she and the child would die. His father's voice echoed again in his memory. Courage is not about knowing the answer. It's about standing where no one else will. Ethan knelt beside her. "I'll help you. I don't know how, but I'll try." The alien woman reached for his hand, her grip weak but steady. "You human, brave." Her words gave him strength, but fear still burned in his chest. He scanned his shelves desperately. What could he use? He had no medical kit, no alien tools, only scraps. But scraps had saved her once already. Maybe they could save her again. He pulled wires, tubes, and filters onto the table. He worked quickly, building something like an artificial lung, connecting it to the air scrubber. His idea was simple. If she struggled to breathe, the machine could push air into her body more steadily. His hands moved fast, though his thoughts were a storm. Sparks flew, smoke rose, but slowly the pieces came together. Meanwhile, the woman cried out, clutching her stomach harder. Her glowing blood shimmered as it spread across her clothes. Ethan's chest tightened at the sight. He had never seen so much blood. His fingers shook, but he forced himself to keep building. Finally, the device gave a faint hum. A mask extended from it, and he carefully placed it over her mouth. She breathed in, and for a moment her chest eased. Relief washed over Ethan like cool water, but it didn't last. Her stomach tightened violently. She cried out, her voice echoing through the workshop. Her hand gripped Ethan's arm so tightly it hurt, but he did not pull away. He stayed beside her, holding her hand, whispering, Breathe. Stay strong. You can do this. Tears filled her glowing eyes. The baby? Too early. It will die. Ethan shook his head fiercely. No, not if I can help it. He searched his shelves again, his eyes wild. He found an old incubation unit he once built for bird eggs as a child. The machine was cracked, dusty, and forgotten. But maybe, just maybe, it could be remade. He dragged it to the table, tearing off broken panels, attaching wires, and linking it to the stabilizer belt. His idea was desperate. If the baby came too soon, he would use this unit to keep it alive until real help came. It was insane. It was impossible. But he had no other choice. The woman screamed again, her voice sharp and trembling. Sweat covered her silver skin, and her breathing grew shallow despite the mask. Ethan rushed to her side. He held her hand with both of his, whispering words he didn't even think about. You're not alone. I'm here. I won't let you go. Her eyes met his, shining with tears and pain. You remind me of my son, she whispered before crying out again. Ethan's throat tightened. She had a family. She had a husband. She had a world waiting for her. If she died here, they would never know how bravely she fought. Suddenly, the hum outside grew louder. Ethan's head snapped up. Through the cracks of the barn roof, he saw more red lights moving. The drones were back, maybe even more than before. They were scanning the ground, closing in. Panic surged through him. If they found the barn now, it was over. He rushed up the stairs, peeking through the cracks. At least 6 drones floated near the field, their beams sweeping the grass. One of them turned toward the barn door. Ethan's chest squeezed. He had to protect her, but how? His machines were weak and he had no weapons. He thought quickly. The broken drone he smashed earlier was still upstairs. Maybe he could use its parts. He grabbed the ruined machine, tore out its power core, and rewired it to his old generator. Sparks spat angrily, but soon the core glowed bright. He carried it to the loft above the barn door. When the first drone drifted closer, Ethan hurled the glowing core onto the ground. It exploded in a blinding flash, throwing dirt and fire into the air. The drones scattered, confused. It wasn't a real victory, but it bought him time. He rushed back down to the workshop. The alien woman was breathing heavily, clutching her stomach. It's coming, she gasped. Ethan's heart dropped. He was not ready. The incubator wasn't finished. The machines weren't strong enough. But the baby wasn't waiting. He placed both hands on the incubator, staring at the wires and lights. Come on, work. Please work. He fixed the final connection. The machine hummed to life, faint but steady. He turned back to her, his eyes burning with determination. You're not alone anymore, he whispered. We'll fight for this baby together. And as another cry of pain filled the workshop, Ethan knew this would be the hardest struggle of his life. But he refused to step back, not now, not ever. The night outside the barn burned with red light. The drones circled like vultures, their beams sweeping across the fields. Each second they grew closer. Each second, Ethan's fear deepened. Down below, the alien woman cried out again, her body shaking in pain as the baby forced its way into the world too early. Ethan stood between 2 storms, death above and life below. He didn't know which one would break first. His machines hummed weakly, holding her alive for now, but she needed more than machines. She needed time. And time was the one thing he didn't have. Suddenly, a sharp sound filled the air. A low rumble, deep and powerful, unlike the high-pitched whine of the drones. Ethan froze, staring through the cracks in the roof. In the night sky, shadows moved. At first, he thought it was another squad of drones. But then he saw it, a ship. Not small like the wreck in the forest, but massive. It slid silently above the trees, its hull black as the night, covered in golden markings that glowed like fire. The drones hesitated, their red lights flickering uncertainly. Then, as if realizing what was coming, they broke formation and scattered into the dark. Ethan's heart jumped. Whoever commanded that ship, the drones feared it. The ground shook as the giant vessel descended. The barn rattled, hay falling from the rafters. Ethan shielded his eyes from the bright light pouring through the cracks. The ship landed in the field and silence fell, heavy and terrifying. A hiss echoed as the ship's ramp opened. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Figures marched down, tall and armored, their steps loud against the earth. Their armor gleamed silver and black, each carrying weapons that pulsed with blue energy. Alien soldiers. They moved with perfect discipline, forming a line outside the barn. And then he appeared. A tall figure in flowing dark robes, his shoulders broad, his presence heavy like a storm. His face was sharp, his skin marked with glowing lines of power. His eyes, cold, piercing, endless, swept across the barn like blades. This was not a soldier. This was a ruler. The alien woman's weak voice broke from below. My husband. Ethan's chest tightened. So this was him, the Galactic Tycoon, the richest, most feared alien in the known worlds. He had heard stories of him. A man who built empires, who crushed enemies, who bent whole planets to his will. And now he was here in Ethan's small town because of the woman hiding beneath the barn. The Tycoon stepped forward. His guards opened the barn doors with a hiss of metal. Light spilled inside, blinding Ethan for a moment. He stumbled back, pipe still in his hand, though he knew it was useless against such power. The Tycoon's cold gaze locked on him. Human child, he said, his voice deep and commanding. Where is she? Ethan's mouth went dry. He wanted to run, to hide. But then he remembered the alien woman's trembling hand, the trust in her eyes. He straightened his back, gripping the pipe tighter. She's safe, he said, his voice shaking but firm. And you're not going to hurt her. For a moment, silence hung heavy. The guards raised their weapons, but the Tycoon lifted a hand. They froze instantly. His eyes narrowed as he studied Ethan. You protect her? Yes, Ethan said, his chest rising with shaky courage. I saved her. I saved your child too. The Tycoon's eyes flashed. He stepped forward, his robe brushing the floor. My wife? My child? Ethan hesitated, then slowly moved toward the trap door. He lifted it open, light spilling into the workshop below. See for yourself. The Tycoon descended, his guards waiting above. The air in the workshop grew heavier as he entered, his presence filling the small room. He looked at his wife, weak but alive, strapped to Ethan's machines. She reached out a trembling hand. Husband. For the first time, the Tycoon's cold mask cracked. His eyes widened, his lips parted. He rushed to her side, kneeling. You live. His voice shook. I thought I lost you. She smiled faintly, her hand resting on his. This human saved us. The Tycoon turned his head slowly. His piercing eyes met Ethan's. For a long, heavy moment, the boy thought he would be killed. But instead, something else happened. The Tycoon's gaze softened. His lips trembled, and for the first time in his life, the most powerful man in the galaxy let a tear fall. You, he whispered, a child, saved what my empire could not. Ethan stood frozen, unsure what to say. The Tycoon lowered his head, pressing his forehead against his wife's. He spoke softly in his alien tongue, words full of relief and love. Then he looked at Ethan again. Human boy, he said, his voice breaking. What do you want? Wealth, power? A world of your own? Speak it, and it will be yours. Ethan blinked, stunned. The richest alien in the galaxy was offering him anything, but all he could think of was the woman lying weak, the child not yet born, and the danger still outside. Slowly, he shook his head. I don't want riches, I just want them safe. The Tycoon stared at him silent, his cold eyes softened further, the steel inside them breaking. Finally, he nodded. Then safe they shall be, and for that, I owe you more than I can repay. The workshop fell quiet again, broken only by the soft hum of Ethan's machines. But Ethan felt it in his chest. Something had changed forever. The Tycoon had come not just with power, but with tears, and the world would never forget what a human child had done. The underground workshop was quiet except for the soft hum of Ethan's machines. The alien Tycoon knelt beside his wife, holding her glowing hands as if he was afraid she would slip away. His robes, rich and heavy, brushed against the floor of Ethan's messy room, mixing dust and wires with the symbols of power. Ethan stood in the corner, still gripping the broken pipe he had used earlier, though now his hands were trembling from exhaustion. He could not believe what he was seeing. The richest alien in the galaxy, a man feared across countless worlds, was not acting like a ruler now. He was acting like a husband terrified of losing his family. The woman breathed slowly through the filter mask, her body shaking. The stabilizer belt pulsed faintly around her stomach, and the small incubator hummed beside her. Ethan's rough inventions were the only reason she was still alive. The Tycoon lifted his head, his glowing eyes red with unshed tears. He looked at Ethan, his voice heavy. Human boy, your hands saved them. Not my army, not my fortune, you. Ethan swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. I just couldn't let her die. The Tycoon's face softened, but then he turned serious, his gaze sharp. Do you know who hunts us? Do you know why my wife's ship was attacked? Ethan shook his head. I don't. The Tycoon's jaw tightened. Enemies, rivals, assassins paid by those who fear my child's birth. They want my family gone so my empire will collapse. His voice shook with anger, but then it broke. If she had died tonight, my whole world would have ended. The alien woman reached for him weakly. But I live because of him, she whispered, her eyes moving to Ethan. The Tycoon turned to the boy again. His expression changed. No longer cold, no longer powerful, just desperate. He stepped closer, his robe trailing across the floor, and lowered himself onto one knee before Ethan. Ethan's breath caught. This man who commanded fleets and ruled empires was kneeling to him. Please, the Tycoon said, his voice trembling. Promise me something. Ethan's heart pounded. What? The Tycoon's eyes filled with tears, the words almost too heavy for him to speak. Promise me. If I cannot protect them, you will. Protect my wife. Protect my child. Even if I fall, you must not let them die. The workshop seemed to freeze. Ethan stared at him in shock. The richest man in the galaxy, begging a 16-year-old human for protection. It didn't make sense. Ethan's throat tightened. Why me? You have armies, soldiers, ships. Why would you ask me? The Tycoon's voice broke, heavy with truth. Because humans are different, Ethan blinked. Different? The Tycoon nodded. My people are strong, but we are weak against certain sicknesses. A new plague spreads among us, silent, deadly. Already it has taken thousands. But humans, your blood resists it. Your kind cannot be touched by it. And if my child inherits weakness from me, his voice cracked, then your strength may be the only hope that keeps him alive. Ethan's chest felt heavy. He was just a boy from a small town, yet now he was being tied to the survival of an alien heir. He glanced at the incubator, at the unborn life inside. The thought that this baby's future might depend on him was overwhelming. I don't know if I can, Ethan whispered. I don't know if I'm enough. The Tycoon leaned closer, his eyes burning. You already proved you are enough. You fought drones with nothing but a pipe. You built life-saving machines from scraps. You gave my wife a chance when the galaxy turned its back. You are the one who stepped forward when no one else could. That is why I ask you. Ethan's hands shook. He thought about all the nights he had been called worthless. The times people laughed at his inventions. The days he felt small and invisible. And now here was a man who ruled worlds telling him he mattered. The alien woman's voice broke the silence. Ethan, I trust you. I trust you with my life, and with my child's. Ethan looked at her, at the soft glow of her eyes, at the life inside her she fought so hard to protect. Something inside him shifted. Fear turned into resolve. Slowly he nodded. I promise, he said, his voice steady. I'll protect them, no matter what. The Tycoon closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek. For a moment, the cold mask of power fell completely away. He placed his hand on Ethan's shoulder, heavy and warm. Then I am in your debt, human boy. A debt greater than gold, greater than planets. A debt written in life itself. Above them, the sound of engines roared as more ships landed. The Tycoon's guards filled the field, their armor shining in the night. The world outside was no longer safe, but in this small workshop, a bond had been forged. A boy had made a promise to a man who ruled stars. Ethan felt the weight of it pressing down on him, but he did not falter. He had made his choice. And deep inside he wondered, had he just stepped into a destiny far larger than he could ever imagine? The field outside the barn glowed with alien ships. Their engines hummed like thunder, and their lights turned the night sky into day. Soldiers stood in perfect lines, weapons raised, waiting for orders. Villagers from the town had gathered at a distance, staring in shock and fear. Never before had so much power descended upon their quiet world. But down in the small workshop beneath the barn, the atmosphere was completely different. It was fragile, quiet, and filled with the sound of life. The alien woman lay weak but alive, the stabilizer belt still glowing faintly. Beside her, the incubator hummed, holding the tiny new life Ethan had fought so hard to protect. The child had arrived. Small, fragile, glowing faintly with its alien heritage, but breathing. Alive. Ethan sat slumped in a chair, his hands covered in grease, blood, and sweat. His whole body ached, but his eyes stayed fixed on the incubator. He had done it. Against all odds, with nothing but scraps and stubborn will, he had kept both mother and child alive. The Tycoon stood silently, his powerful figure trembling as he looked down at the incubator. His cold mask of control had fallen away completely. His lips quivered, his chest rose with sharp breaths, and then, as he reached inside and touched the tiny hand of his newborn child, tears poured freely down his face. "Alive," he whispered. "My child. Lives." The soldiers above heard their leaders cry. They lowered their weapons. For the first time, many of them saw their master, the man they feared, reduced not by war or defeat but by love. The alien woman smiled weakly, her glowing eyes soft as she looked at Ethan. "You saved us. Both of us." Ethan's throat tightened. He had no words. He just nodded, staring at the tiny child who now represented not just one family, but an entire empire's future. The Tycoon turned toward Ethan. His eyes were wet but fierce, burning with a strange mix of pride and humility. "Human boy," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "The galaxy will remember this night. It will remember not my power, not my riches, but you." Ethan shook his head. "I didn't do it for the galaxy, I couldn't let them die." The Tycoon's lips curved into the faintest smile. "That is why you are greater than kings. You saved not for reward but for life itself. That is what makes humans different. That is what makes you dangerous to those who think only of power." Above, the villagers whispered as soldiers began to spread word of what had happened. A single human child had saved the wife and heir of the richest alien in the stars. The story spread like fire, carried on the voices of soldiers, villagers, and even the fleeing drones that had witnessed part of it. By morning, it would not just be a story. It would be legend. The Tycoon stood tall again, his robe trailing across the floor. He looked at Ethan, and for the first time in his long life, he bowed his head to someone weaker, smaller, poorer than him. "You are no longer just a boy from Earth," he said. "You are the guardian of my child, the protector of my family, and to me that makes you greater than emperors." Ethan's chest tightened. He was just 16. He still had grease under his nails, holes in his shoes, and a workshop built from trash. Yet now he carried a promise that could shake galaxies. The alien woman reached out, her voice soft. "Ethan, when my child grows, he will know your name first. He will know who saved him, and he will carry that story into the stars." The incubator hummed again, the tiny hand of the newborn pressing against the glass. Ethan stared at it, his eyes wide. For a moment it felt like the child was reaching for him, reaching for the promise he had made. He placed his hand gently against the glass. "You're safe now," he whispered. "And I'll keep you safe. Always." Above, the Tycoon's ships began to rise, preparing to leave Earth. Soldiers boarded, their armor shining as the engines roared. The ground shook, and the villagers gasped in awe as the fleet took to the sky. But before stepping onto his ship, the Tycoon paused and looked back at Ethan one last time. "Our worlds are different," he said, his voice echoing across the field. "But tonight a human child saved what empires could not. Let this be known. Humans are not weak. They are the guardians of life." And then, with his wife and newborn carried carefully onto the ship, the Tycoon departed. The massive vessel rose into the heavens, its golden markings blazing like a star. The night sky swallowed it, leaving only silence and the trembling earth behind. Ethan stood alone in the field, watching until the last light faded. His chest felt heavy, but not with fear anymore, with purpose. He knew his life would never return to the way it was. The galaxy now carried his name, and the bond he had forged would echo far beyond Earth. Back in his workshop, the machines hummed softly, the place still smelling of smoke and wires. Ethan sat down, exhausted but smiling faintly. For the first time, he didn't feel like the junk boy. He felt like someone who mattered, someone who had changed everything. And as he looked at the stars, he whispered to himself, "Maybe humans really do have a place among them."